Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow Masterclass, a series of digital-first conversations that we do here on Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. I'm Sananda Jayaseelan, and tonight I'm bringing you part 1 of a masterclass that we did around Women's Day, talking to 3 of India's biggest leaders. Amongst other things, calling out the big events that they feel are going to impact the life of entrepreneurs going forward and have had an impact already, including the pandemic, as well as the digital revolution that has created so many female entrepreneurs here in the country. All of that on tonight's episode. Let me welcome our guests. First up, Naina Lal Kidwai, past president, FICCI; Swati Bhargava, co-founder Cash Karo Earn Karo; Natasha Patel, CEO, India Sanitation Coalition. I want to thank the 3 of you once again for joining us today to really give us your perspective and to talk about what's happening as far as the state of entrepreneurship for women in the country today. And I want to start the ball rolling by talking about some events which are impacting the state of entrepreneurship specific to women entrepreneurs. Naina, if I could come to you first, ma'am. What has been, according to you, the biggest impact that the pandemic has had as far as women in the workforce and women in general are concerned?
So let me kick this off by really looking at some of the statistics which are very worrying on this front. The fact that COVID's impact on women workforce across the country and indeed across the world has really been pretty serious. There's an Oxfam India figure which says the estimated economic loss from women losing their jobs during the pandemic is nearly $216 billion. And that women contributed to the nation in COVID times as teachers, as ASHA workers, as nurses, as paramedics, self-help group leaders, community kitchens, sanitation workers. Each one has led the war on COVID. So that's the positive. But the negative is people, women in particular, have lost jobs. And many turned their traditional female skills into a livelihood. So that's terrific. Started home-based businesses encompassing textiles, catering, boutiques, crafts, etc. And I believe it is these women who will pave the path for many more women entrepreneurs to realize their full potential, because these women managed to pivot to conquer the issues that they began to face at COVID, where their existing businesses were indeed an issue, and they pivoted to change and make COVID an opportunity.
Swati, to you first, just to set the ball rolling as your opening comments for you as that big event that you would like to call out for entrepreneurs who've logged into this masterclass. What has been perhaps those 2 or 3 big impacts of the pandemic for women entrepreneurs? I would like to set the ball rolling on that.
Well, I think the fact that work from home has become a lot more normal now, that has really helped women overall. And, there are companies that we ourselves would have never dreamt of hiring the most senior leaders in our company without ever meeting them. And we've pretty much gone from a team of 110 to a team of 275, all during COVID period. So we've done so much hiring across level. Many of them, of course, are women. So I think the fact that overall companies, opened up to work from home a lot more during this period is really a win-win for women. On the other hand, I personally also saw that, the risk-taking appetite for women and women entrepreneurs was actually much lesser during COVID compared to their male counterparts. Very often families said that, oh, COVID impact, how will you bear through this? So just shut down your business. Later on, I do want to come back to how family support is really important for us to have more women entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. But, not everybody got that support. So we saw many businesses folding as well. At the same time, like Ms. Kidwai said, many women actually came up and made use of that remote opportunity, and we saw a lot of new businesses coming up. And now when you see things like WhatsApp shopping, Instagram shopping, I mean, even on one of our own apps, Earn Karo, we have so many women and housewives who've been sharing deals and earning money. So a lot of women actually took up to these new digitized ways of earning money, which they had not explored before, perhaps. So definitely there was there were some pros as well.
Another big event that I want to call out for, and we will come to that in just a bit, but perhaps dovetailing really into the impact of the pandemic. And Natasha, this question is to you. If you could talk about one, the biggest impact that in your mind the pandemic has had as far as entrepreneurship is concerned and female entrepreneurs, and then we'll come and talk about some of the other events that we've seen which have had an impact.
So effectively, I think one of the very interesting, events that happened with the pandemic, and specifically, I'll kind of focus on the sanitation sector, which is, where I work, has been the ability for women to actually find themselves in a lot of ways. So where, there are many, many studies that have been written about the way women have suffered, they walk long distances to collect water. What the pandemic has done has actually been they've been able to get together, form self-help groups, and these self-help groups have effectively given them a role as entrepreneurs. So we are seeing some very heartening stories coming from the rural heartland of India, specifically, where women are actually, banding together, creating little groups, finding roles for themselves within their own communities, and being able to earn money from that. So that is a very positive fact. On the urban side, I would say there is still a lot of work to be done, because the complexities in urban India are a lot more than they are in rural India. In rural India, women are part of a community. In urban India, in the majority of cases, they're isolated because they belong to a family. At best, they belong to a community in which they work. But beyond that, the help that they require was not made available to them. So I think those issues also need to be looked at separately. Yeah.
Sure. The second big event which has had an impact as far as the state of entrepreneurship and perhaps also female entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurship in general. And I want to come to you, Natasha, something that you were just saying as far as sanitation is concerned. Swachh Bharat, one of the big themes really in the push on the part of the central government. Naina, please do join in on this conversation as well. But under that broad umbrella, if there are any specific trends that you want to call out for our entrepreneurs today to say, hey, this is going to pick up and this is what you should be looking at, what would you like to tell them?
Okay, so I'm assuming the entrepreneurs all come from both rural and urban backgrounds, right? So let me pick up the rural one first, because it's the easier one and it's got the slightly more positive story. There are several schemes that the government has put in place, as we all know. The most popular one is the Pradhan Mantri Rozgar Yojana, which effectively actually is specifically targeted towards women and allows them to get very interesting funding for their schemes. So that is something that women actually find is a big stepping stone, and it becomes a hurdle for them in a lot of cases. So like that, there is the NRLM within the urban space, which is also looking at women specifically to give them jobs. And this is very heartening, specifically from the point of view of the returning migrants. So a lot of women who may have lived in cities and who had to move back to their villages, during the pandemic, are actually being able to find jobs from that perspective. If you look at it from the urban side, again, a little bit skewed in terms of a story, but I do think that women are actually, and this is something that's personally something I'm very proud of, being a woman. We have the ability to think big, and even if you're stuck in a situation, you will be able to find a way out of it. So many women who were stuck in situations where they had to become home makers, they had to leave their jobs and eventually lost their jobs after the lockdown, they did find alternative ways of making money. And it could be either tiffins, for example, in urban areas, or even starting small businesses, which with a little bit of capital for which they do get funding. these are things that men would not normally want to do, but women don't have that sense of, this is too small for me to do. So I think that was also a very positive story or trend that came out post the pandemic. Yeah.
Anna, would you want to add to this?
I'd like to just come in to add that as we look at the public services that the nation needs, and sanitation and delivery of water are amongst those public services, and exactly as Natasha says, are quite central to the government's program. There are jobs there, as Natasha also says, that women will rise to, but we can also specify that those jobs are for women. And in fact, this is what the government has also set out to do in water, where encouraging these Pani Samitis or water committees in the communities. I'm hoping that we will see more women entrepreneurs come into the whole area of treatment of sewage, the running of these small sewage treatment plants, being managers, running public services for cleaning, etc., where they employ bands of men and women to do this activity. Skilling would be key, finance would be another.
I have to take a quick break at this point. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. Tonight, we're bringing you highlights of our masterclass that we've done as part of our Women's Day special. Swati, perhaps you can take this as a two-part question, and I want to talk about digital. You are a fantastic example of the innovation that's happening in the digital and the tech ecosystem. Just run us through your own background, how you got started perhaps quickly, and then also talk about why digital is leveling the playing field for women entrepreneurs.
Yes, and actually my story is how education and digital both are leveling, So I grew up in a small town called Ambala, and I had no idea that I'm going to go abroad and study, but I got a scholarship to the Singapore, high school by the government of Singapore, then a scholarship to the London School of Economics. So education is what helped me get to Goldman Sachs. I did investment banking in London for 5 years. Then started the business with my husband, expanded it and brought it to India, and it was all in the digital space. And when I look back, I feel that, and maybe I'll touch upon this point later in terms of how education, really helps women get ahead. And it's the answer to a lot of the stats that we sit and observe, whether it's workforce, labor force, boardroom, all of that. But three things that I want to add here right now, which is at the confluence of women and digital, we've seen three things happen, right? Number one, to Natasha's point, women have really stepped up during this pandemic time as well and said that, okay, how are we going to make use of digital? So I have seen on our Earn Karo app, women from villages, from tier 2 to tier 6 cities, they basically are making their own links and sharing it in their WhatsApp groups. Super entrepreneurial, right? Women have made their WhatsApp groups, they're sharing links, people are buying through their links, they earn money. Women are going out, sourcing orders in tier 2, tier 6 cities for Saffola oil, for Surf, for Rin, placing online orders, earning money. So it's, because e-commerce is a key benefactor of the whole pandemic. We've seen a lot of growth come in. So women have taken advantage of that in terms of monetizing it. Secondly, starting their own e-commerce businesses, and they've embraced technology to do that. The number of fashion designers right now out there who are women who have launched their online shops because they couldn't go and exhibit anymore in physical spaces is just amazing. And they've all got WhatsApp bots and WhatsApp solutions where you just go, you get a bot, you place your order and you do it. And 2 years ago, the same women have told me very categorically, we cannot do this whole technology thing. I'm okay with my exhibition. So that transformation has been amazing. And number three is IPOs. Look at the IPOs that we've had in the digital space over the last 1 year, right? And seeing somebody like Falguni and Naika and so many other women entrepreneurs do well, we have a new era of role models coming out.
Our first question, this is coming in for Naina. Neha Chaudhary sending in this question, and she says, how can we also become CEOs of large organizations like Naina? What perhaps helped her? What would you like to tell her?
Well, the good news is that the slate is wide open for all and any of us to get there. I think the starting point is, the education and the degrees that you're able to bring in, and just adds to the credibility that when you start your career, people believe, okay, she's got the degrees, she's obviously made it through that system. Then, of course, it's up to you, because the degree is not enough. You have to be able to deliver. For me, the multinational companies I worked in were ideal places where the fight was not one of trying to establish oneself as a woman worker. You got your due if you were good. It was a meritocracy, and you focused on just doing your job as a result. Sure. I think the most critical one, though, is the family and the family support. Swati alluded to it, that I don't think any of us get to where we want in terms of senior leadership without the full support of one spouse. I know that I would not be where I am if it wasn't for my husband and the support we got, particularly through the childbearing years and when my daughter was born and that period, and of course the family. The broader family, parents, mother-in-laws, etc., because you don't want to be coming back to having to fight these battles at home.
Our second question, and this is open to all three of you on today's panel, but Swati, maybe if you can take the lead on this one. Nilofer D'Souza, she said she's self-employed. Her question is, the fact that we are even having a debate on women with the word woman in it shows that we haven't moved ahead when it comes to gender parity. Agree with her, but what would you like to tell Nilofer?
Nilofer, I hear you completely. I'm of that camp where, sometimes when women say, when people tell me, are you a woman entrepreneur? I'm like, no, I'm an entrepreneur. The fact that you won't call a male, right? Hey, are you a male entrepreneur? So I hear you completely that, sometimes this lingo throws us off and we feel like, why is it needed? But, I have come from that same thinking, saying, why is this needed? To at the same time seeing the fact that because we've been talking about it a lot more over the last couple of years, it's actually, made more people conscious and raise awareness about the fact that women also want to do certain things. And we need you to take us seriously. We need you to provide the support that we need, not just for us because we're women, it's just that it's needed. I've really seen that change over the last couple of years. So hang in there a little bit, maybe. That's what I would say.
Sure. Let me quickly take in our first poll question. And for everyone who has registered for today's masterclass, this is popping up on your screens as we speak, and I will take the responses in just a moment. Should there be additional funding support for female entrepreneurs, whether it is from government or from other sources? And this is, of course, open to all of you. I'll take the responses in just a moment. But an additional question that I have, which is a follow-up to that poll question for our audience, to all three of you, is that data showing that funding for women-led entrepreneurs, which was already dismal, it was in single digits, has fallen even further. It has fallen nearly 24% in the first half of 2020 alone. How can this be fixed? This is a big picture question. I know there's no simple solution, but perhaps one or two things that you'd like to flag off for today's audience.
So let me jump in here to say that it is actually a real concern that finance does not flow readily to women entrepreneurs. And we need to do a lot more. Government programs are only part of it. But the way banks look at women entrepreneurs is evident sometimes in the nature of questions that get asked, because there's always this concern around, so what are you going to do when you get married or when you have children? And are you going to continue the business? Questions that are never asked of a guy. And they come from a mindset which I fear is still in the dark ages, but it is there. For other reasons, again, because, people, or maybe just the nature of projects that women come forward with are just not as easy to finance and fund. Typically, if you are just doing smaller businesses that go up and down, fashion, for example, is one of them, which can see very cyclical sort of routes, you don't easily get that finance. So to some extent, it is also the nature of business. But the third, and maybe one of the reasons why you saw the decline in credit was that on the one hand, women shut their businesses. So if you shut, you're no longer borrowing. So you see a decline. But there's also, I fear, this whole issue around, and I think the pandemic only highlighted it, is that women, when they needed the finance, were not able to access it because women were largely averse to loans and borrowing. When they needed the money, which was over the pandemic, when their businesses began to suffer, they did not have the credit history which went with having borrowed. So to be a first-time borrower at a time when your business is going south is not easy, because the time to be actually developing your credit history is when your business looks good, so that when things go down, go south, you are in a position to borrow. So I would say it's very important for women entrepreneurs to build your credit history. You don't borrow huge amounts of money if you don't need it, but just that little bit to ensure that your credit rating, your credit history is there in the bank's books, so that when you reach out to actually borrow the larger amounts that you're going to need, it's not a case of you're having to start from ground zero.
Sure. The response to our poll coming in, 91% of you saying yes, 9% saying no. Out of time on tonight's masterclass, but we have part 2 coming up. We continue taking all of your questions. We also continue discussing the top trends that our women leaders are discussing with us. That was part 1 of our Women's Day Masterclass special, talking about the events which have had an impact and will continue having an impact on female entrepreneurs in the country. What do we have lined up on part 2? Here's a sneak peek. With that, we're ending tonight's show. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Women really need to be encouraged, and the encouragement has to come from families, from the ecosystem. We've got to make it far more enabling for them to see that these are the roles that they should be able to espouse in the future.
The principle has to be that women are paid by just equally, at times even more, than their male counterparts, because they're better at what they do.